hope you're having a great week. I'm here with our midweek read aloud. So we finally finished Abraham's story in Genesis this past week, what we're going to do of it. And we're moving on, and I was reading in Genesis in the following chapters, and I was reading about how Sarah died, and Isaac was feeling sad. Of course, his mother died, and he's about 40, and so even though that seems a bit old to get married, back then it was a little different. So Abraham sends his servant to a faraway place to find him a wife. He doesn't send Isaac to go date or meet some nice ladies. Madeline's here with me today too. Instead, he sends his servant, and he tells him, God's going to help you find a wife for Isaac. So the servant goes and finds Rebecca. And when I was reading about that part, I noticed that after he found her and said, I think this is who God wants for Isaac to marry. Will you come back with me to our land and marry him? Her family says, yes, she can go and do this thing, but let her stay for a little while. Don't let her go yet. And then the servant says, no, I think she needs to come now, because that's what God, that's why he granted me the success, so she could immediately come. So they did something that I found kind of unusual, in that they called Rebecca and asked her, are you ready to go? And she just says, yes, I'm ready. Let's do it. And just the trust that she had, that she was brave to make that choice to trust in God and just go and do this, get married to this guy who she'd never seen before, didn't know. And so when I was looking for our midweek read aloud, I decided to look for a story with a brave girl. And this one actually has two brave girls. So the book that I'm going to share is actually a chapter book this week. I'm just going to read aloud part of one chapter to you.
My favorite chapter.
It's our favorite chapter. Madeline and I just finished this book a couple weeks ago. It's called Happy Little Family by Rebecca Caudill. It's similar to Little House on the Prairie type of books. It takes place in Kentucky in the olden days, and it's a large family. And let me show you some of the picture on the front, and I'll try to help you identify all the members of the family. So there's the mom and dad, of course. The oldest girl is Alfie, and she's 12. The next oldest is Chris. He's 10. He's the only boy in the family. The next oldest is Emmy. She's 8. Debbie is, or maybe that's Debbie. We're not really sure. Debbie is 6, and Bonnie is 4. She's the baby of the family. So this story that I'm going to read to you has to do with
arrowheads.
Bonnie, the littlest one, that's 4, and Alfie, the big sister, that's 12. Okay, so what's happened to this point is that their father was out working in the fields, and he found a really cool arrowhead. Well, all of them have arrowhead collections except for the youngest, Bonnie. She doesn't have one yet because she's little. She hasn't learned to look really well and find them in the grass. I haven't
even found one.
Don't interrupt, okay. So, anyway, they all want this cool arrowhead that the father found. And so he kind of tells them, let's see who's the bravest this week, over the next week, and I'll choose one of you to give it to. So they all are coming home at night telling their stories of how they were brave. So this is the one that Alfie and Bonnie experienced together. Mother called Alfie to go to the pasture for Peed. Peed is their cow. Maybe I should say Pied.
Pied. It's Pied, not Peed.
It's spelled P-I-E-D if you're interested. Okay, we'll call it Pied. Alfie was in front of the mirror tying a pink ribbon at the top and another pink ribbon at the bottom of the long, light brown braid that hung down her back. Remember, she's the oldest. She's 12. Want to come, Bonnie? Alfie asked, taking a last look at herself. Bonnie went running. She liked going to the pasture for Pied. She especially liked going with Alfie. Alfie knew where to find wintergreen leaves to chew as they walked along, and May apples and buckeyes to put in their pockets, and puffballs to burst with their feet. She knew stories to tell Bonnie and guessing games to play with her as they walked along. They walked to the top of the hill where they let down the bars. Then they went through the woods and across the pasture calling, Suki, Suki, Suki. That's how they're calling pied.
That's how they call pigs. Kind of like we do.
I thought it was it's a cow they're looking for. You're right, they do. But I guess they call cows in that way too.
Sweet.
High in the hilly pasture, Pied was eating clover. When she saw Althea and Bonnie, she set out for home, her bell tinkling a silver tune as she hurried to see her calf. Behind her walked Bonnie, always a little ahead of Althea, back across the pasture and through the still dim woods. Okay, there is one little drawing I'll show you where they see the cow, Pied, and there's Althea and there's Bonnie.
I didn't see Pied.
Bonnie had almost reached the bars. "Bonnie!" Althea called to her. "Stand still where you are. Stand very still and don't move." Bonnie stood very still and didn't move. Althea had thought up a new game to play with her, she thought. "Turn around now," commanded Althea, "toward me." Bonnie turned toward Althea. "Now walk to me," said Althea, "slowly. Don't run. Don't run a step." Bonnie plodded along as slowly as a tortoise. When she finally reached Althea, Althea stooped and put her arms around her and held her safely. "Look, Bonnie," she said, pointing toward the bars. There in the path beside the bars lay a rattlesnake, coiled round and round, ready to strike, its rattles sizzling with anger. "Will it hurt us?" whimpered Bonnie, putting her arms tightly about Althea's neck. "Not now," said Althea. "What shall we do?" asked Bonnie. She felt like crying, but when she saw that Althea was not crying, she decided not to cry either. It made her feel quite big. "We'll just wait until it decides to go away," said Althea. I'm going to show you the picture where Bonnie is walking towards Althea before she knows what's over there, and then you can kind of see the snake over there. Okay. They waited and watched. In a short time, the rattlesnake felt good-humored again. The rattles on the end of its tail quieted down. It uncoiled itself and slithered away from the path through the dead leaves. Althea, holding Bonnie's hand tightly in her own, hurried through the bars and down the hill. That night, at the supper table, Althea told Father what had happened. "How far was Bonnie from the snake?" asked Father, his face very serious. "Only 1 step," said Althea, "one little step the size of Bonnie's." "How did you happen to see the snake?" asked Father. "I heard it first," said Althea. "I heard it shaking its rattles, and I knew it was somewhere close." "Ugh!" said Debbie. She's the 6-year-old. "Didn't you scream, Althea?" "I'd have screamed." "If I'd have screamed, I would have scared Bonnie, and she might have stepped on the snake," said Althea. "Why didn't you run?" asked Emmy. "I think I would have run." "Why did you tell Bonnie to walk?" Chris asked. "I would have told her to grease her heels and fly." "If Bonnie had run, she might have made the snake much madder than it already was," explained Althea, "and then it might have struck her." Father's face was still serious as he got up from the table. He walked straight to the mantel, took down the Indian arrowhead, and handed it to Althea. "You are as brave as any Indian ever was, Althea," he said, "and wiser than most of them. You have won the arrowhead." "I think Althea deserves it too," said Mother. Chris and Emmy, Debbie, and Bonnie looked once more at the red arrowhead with the dogwood petals carved on the stem of it
Dogwood petals?
as Althea laid it away in her gold jewel box and locked the lid. After a moment, Chris spoke. "I think Bonnie ought to have an arrowhead too," he said. "She didn't cry. She didn't run. She did just what Althea told her to. Remember that greenish one of mine, Bonnie, with the white band across it? I think I'll give you that one." He ran up the stairs to his room and came back with the arrowhead. "Thank you, Chris," said Bonnie. Debbie gave her an arrowhead too, and Emmy gave her 3 arrowheads. "Now I can start a collection," said Bonnie, "like Debbie's." "Until you're big enough to find arrowheads yourself, you can't make a real collection," Debbie reminded her. "I'll start looking in the morning," said Bonnie. "I think I'll be big enough in the morning." "It's bedtime now, Bonnie," said Mother. "I'll help you wash your feet tonight." "I'll help you undress, Bonnie," said Father when Mother finished drying her feet. Hand in hand, Bonnie and Father went up the stairs to the room where she slept with Emmy. While Bonnie talked about arrowheads, Father unbuttoned her dress for her, buttoned her nightie, and hung her clothes on a chair.
Nightie.
He heard her say, "Now I lay me down to sleep," lifted her into bed, pulled the cover up to her chin, and kissed her good night. And there's the illustration for that page. So, who do you think was braver, Althea or Bonnie?
Bonnie.
You think Bonnie was?
Yes.
But Althea was the one that knew
I can't
the snake was
decide.
there. think about that. And does it even matter? I don't know. It's just an interesting
I
thing
think
to
they
think
were
about.
both brave because if Alfie had told her to run, it would have struck her.
That's true.
And I don't want to say the scary thing that almost happened to me when I was little.
So this is from Happy Little Family by Rebecca Caudill. And that's funny. Her name's Rebecca, like in the Bible, but spelled differently. But we're talking about Rebecca and how she trusted God without question, without saying, no, wait a minute. Tell me about this Isaac guy. Explain his whole life story to me. How cute is he? You know, all that kind of silly stuff. She could have asked a lot of questions, but it doesn't tell us that she did. It just says she was given a choice. This is in Genesis chapter 24, verse 55. Her brother and mother replied, "Let the girl remain with us 10 days or so, then you may go." But the servant said to them, "Do not keep me now that the Lord has granted success for my journey. Send me on my way so I may go to my master. He wants to go ahead and take Rebecca and go back to Isaac and Abraham." Then they said, "Let's call the girl and ask her about it." So they called Rebecca and asked her, "Will you go with this man?" "I will go," she said. So they sent their sister Rebecca on her way along with her nurse and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebecca and said to her, "Our sister, may you increase to thousands upon thousands. May your offspring possess the gates of their enemies." Then Rebecca and her maids got ready and mounted their camels and went back with the man. So the servant took Rebecca and left. So we're thinking about that bravery, that trust in this was God's plan for her life, and trusting that the servant was being truthful and, sharing about how God had led him to Rebecca, and just thinking about all those things together and the amount of trust and faith it took for her to step out bravely in faith and say, "I will go." So I hope you enjoyed that short chapter book excerpt, and let me know if you need any information on finding that book, and I'll see you next time. Bye.